Good evening, everyone. My name is Lauren Horst, and I am here today with my colleagues, Prithvi Nag, Wes Budros, and Chris Lyon, and we are Team Jakarta. So we want to thank you for listening to our recommendations this evening and for taking time out of your day. So first, we would like to walk you through a brief agenda of what we're going to discuss. First, we'll put up our recommendation, a high-level overview, and then how we got there, what the competitive landscape is like, and then within our recommendations, how do you implement them, when do you implement them, and what are some of the risks that you might face in this process? So first, we have 3 key recommendations. The first one is to develop and sell optimized chips. These are chips that will live in devices ranging from an EKG machine to a dishwasher. And these chips will enable these devices to interact with applications in order to track real-time data from these devices. Second, we would like you to focus even more on your healthcare and energy practices. We know that you partake in this field right now, and we know that you do it very well. But we see that by an increased focus on these 2 specific verticals, you can leverage what you're already good at in order to increase your sales in these new chips and what we're going to also deem mobile content enablement. Mobile content enablement is what we envision to be a platform in order to use these optimized chips. It's going to be a specialized middleware to really increase and make the process of developing programs and applications easier. So really, by implementing these 3 key recommendations, we believe you can increase your incremental revenue between approximately $850 million and $2.1 billion. So why is this? We know that connectivity over the next 5 to 10 years is going to increase exponentially because of cloud computing, mobility, and broadband. And these 3 aspects together are going to transform industry. And we know that there are going to be several opportunities because of this. But we really want to know, are these opportunities going to impact you and address the challenges that exist today? So looking at that challenges first in the healthcare industry, we know that we have an aging population. We know that we have increasing healthcare costs. And we have IT infrastructure that is extremely fragmented. So with this increased connectivity, we believe that you can leverage these 3 key aspects in order to increase quality of care, in order to decrease healthcare costs, and in order to have access in a unified way to your fragmented infrastructure. Secondly, in the energy industry, we know that our consumption is increasing more than we can sustain in the long term. We also know that this is eventually going to have a long-term impact on our environment, and we need a solution. So by using this connectivity opportunity, we believe that we can actually monitor in real time how we're consuming energy and when we're consuming it. And by doing this, we can really decrease not only our energy costs, but also our use and our carbon footprint in the long run. So looking at this, we want to know what our vision is going to be for 2015. We know healthcare is changing, and we know that energy is changing. So first, looking at healthcare in 2015, we envision this. Let's take Michael. He's a physician. He's walking through the hallways doing his rounds on Friday morning. And he receives an alert to his cell phone. And it says that his patient downstairs is crashing. Before he even has to reach her room, he can check her vital signs. He can understand what happened, and he can devise a plan in order to help her recover and stabilize her. And all of this happens before he even reaches her hospital room. Once he gets there and he stabilizes her, he then is able to go back to his mobile device, access his pharmacy app, order the correct drugs in order to aid in her recovery, and transmit this immediately to the pharmacy on site. The hospital pharmacy is then able to fill this order, deliver it back to the patient, and immediately contact the insurance company, all because of these optimized chips. So next, I'll turn it over to Prithvi to discuss our vision for energy.
So let's talk about our vision for the energy sector. Let's take an example of John. He's got his alarm set on his smartphone for 6 in the morning. Now his smartphone is connected to the cloud. It speaks to his smart house, which makes sure that the water is heated right in the right time when he wakes up at 6 for his bath. While he's in the shower, downstairs the heating is turned on by the smart home, knowing that he's going to be going down after he finishes the shower. Once he's downstairs, once, to go ahead. So once John is finally downstairs, what happens is that he has his breakfast, he's on his way out, he puts his clothes into the washing machine, he puts his dishes into the dishwasher, and then he heads out. Now his car is connected to the same smart grid, and it knows where he needs to go. It already feeds that into the GPS system. Next, what happens is as he drives out, the car tells the smart home that John is now going to work. So there's no need to keep the heating on, and the heating is turned off. On his way out, what John had done was he had set his washing machine and his dishwasher to run at an optimal time. Now let's talk about what this optimal time is. Now what happens is these devices are connected to your house. Now the smart home talks to the grid, and it finds out the cheapest spot rates throughout the day. And it will run the machine at the cheapest time possible. So let's say the grid says 3 o'clock is the cheapest time, and that's when these machines will be run. Meanwhile, John has reached his factory. Now his factory is also enabled to be smart and to connect to the cloud. It talks to the same power grid, and it finds out that what is the best time for the factory to run its machines. And it schedules these machines to run at those right times. And this doesn't just work in one way. It works the other way around. Is let's say there's a shortage of power, the grid will then talk to the factory and say that, why not run at some other time, and we'll offer you cheaper rates at that time, and that ensures that critical services are not affected. So overall, what we're saying is that we have this network of smart homes, smart factories, smart offices, all talking to the grid and making sure that critical services don't get affected. So moving forward, we're going to talk about the overall landscape of healthcare IT systems. So when you look at healthcare IT systems, what do we have? We've got these smart tablets, we've got your smartphones, which are always connected. You've also got these medical equipment, which are diagnosing you, and also constantly streaming this information over the network. Next, we've got apps. Now, the apps are pieces of software which help us make some sense of all this information presented to us in a way which is meaningful to us. Now, in order to transmit all of this, we need the wireless network. And finally, all this information that we're transmitting through this wireless network goes and sits on the cloud where it can be accessed from anywhere. Stepping back a bit, we need security. We're talking about healthcare IT systems. Security is very important. This is all private data. That ties in throughout the system. Next, there's middleware. Middleware is what ties each of these components together. Finally, we've talked a lot about the hardware. We've also got professional services. So this is where Ericsson comes in and provides not only the hardware, but also the overall solution. Now, going forward next, what we have is the energy IT system landscape. Now, we've already talked about the smart homes. We've talked about all these devices which are connected. Now, these smart homes will have these smart energy meters, which will transmit your usage patterns and your usage needs, let's say, to the cloud. All of this, again, happens through the same wireless network. Finally, what happens is your utility company will access all this information about you. And this is not just you. This is about all the factories, all the smart homes in your area. And based on that, it will try and shape the demand. It will talk to your transmission lines and make sure that the energy reaches the right point at the right time. So overall, we've talked about our vision. We've talked about what the landscape is going to look like. And next, I'm going to hand over to Wes, who's going to tell us how Ericsson's going to get there.
Thanks, Prithvi. I really appreciate you and Lauren sharing with us what is a very exciting and I think also a very bold future. I'd like to take a minute to talk a little bit about how Ericsson can enable this future, as well as add a significant line of business to it. One of the first things we did in our analysis was actually to look at the major players that are currently in the information communication technology stack. I think some of the key takeaways from this slide really lie in Ericsson's strengths. Ericsson has an extremely deep knowledge of the wireless network infrastructure business. They also have a strong professional services offering to supplement this business. They have some great offerings in security and wireless chips, as well as some smaller offerings around cloud, middleware, and mobile apps. The next thing we want to look at is analyzing these same areas of the stack, identify opportunities for Ericsson to grow. We came away with 4. The first one is wireless network infrastructure. Clearly, that's a stronghold today for Ericsson, and our plan incorporates that in the future with additional growth. We also believe that wireless chips is another great opportunity by leveraging the ST Ericsson competencies and increasing growth and profitability. We're also recommending an additional set of middleware, which was alluded to earlier, and I'll talk more about that in a minute. We think that this middleware could be really important moving forward, as it will allow Ericsson to cross-sell other products, and it will also put them in a very strong position to set some of the standards and the future that we just spoke about. Finally, services. Ericsson has a significant services offering today, and we believe that growing this is crucial to rolling out these new services, ensuring that clients have robust and well thought through solutions, while also making sure that Ericsson's technologies are being used to their full. So, one of the key tenets of our recommendations is mobile communication enablement. What mobile communication enablement is a unified communication channel linking the cloud, connected devices, and mobile devices. It enables developers to rapidly deploy applications faster and less expensively. It allows the chips that are in the devices to use less power, have more functionality, and cost less money. In addition, it allows enterprise applications to easily connect with mobile devices through secure, optimized pathways. I'd like to turn it over now to my colleague Chris Lyon to talk a little bit about the business model behind this.
Thank you, Wes. So Wes and the rest of my team has laid out the landscape and where we think Ericsson has opportunities to play within this landscape that are very attractive. But how does this all come together in terms of a product and services solution that is bundled together to provide a complete package to the healthcare and the energy industries? We see a complete platform that will be developed, bringing in all these components that we have talked about: the wireless network infrastructure, the middleware solution that Wes was just talking about, as well as optimized chips. The optimized chips will communicate with all the various devices, the smart devices, not just in healthcare or energy, but actually across all vertical industries. So what I want to really iterate here is that while we're developing something and focusing here on healthcare and energy, this is really a complete platform play that can be utilized across multiple verticals. Focusing on healthcare and energy, let's talk about some of those devices, though. We've already talked about them, let me just reiterate. So on healthcare, we have the tablets, we have the monitoring equipment, and we have the medical devices such as the EKGs and the MRIs. And on the energy side, we have the smart meters, we have the devices, the appliances in the home, such as the refrigerators and the washing machines, and the air conditioning units. And there's also electric cars that might be plugging in to tap off that same resource. And as we've talked about, professional services sort of sits on top of all this, helping enable the development and the rollout of these capabilities. So how do we play here? Focusing on the chips. We can build that internally. ST Ericsson has strong capabilities to do that, but we're not going to build the devices. But it is very, very critical that we partner or JV with the major manufacturers who are developing those devices. The reason being that we need to make sure the chips are optimized to the devices. For example, on tablets, we might partner with Motorola, or on EKGs, we might partner with GE, or down the energy side, we might partner with Itron for the energy meters. The wireless network infrastructure, this is something you already have in play. You're one of the leaders here, and you'll continue to do so, and this will support the entire system. And on the mobile communication enablement, the middleware, we also have looked at the abilities and the capabilities of Ericsson, and we think you can build this and develop this internally. And lastly, professional services, that is something you also have internally, but you will have to look at how strong your healthcare and energy industry competencies are and whether you need to build that up at all, maybe by making some small acquisitions of some very specific healthcare IT or energy IT, or maybe just bringing in over some players who will join your team. And how are you going to make money? A lot of it's direct sale on the chip side, the wireless network, and the mobile communication. We also think, going back to the JV, that there's a real marketing play here you could do as well, and that it could, kind of like people always talk about the Intel inside, you could be the Ericsson inside. You could become the communication chip of choice for smart devices across the industry. And you could really utilize that. And because of that marketing opportunity, not only is there the ability to sell the chip, but potentially get some revenue share through that. And then the professional services is fee for services. So just to reiterate, though, this is a platform play. There's opportunities in healthcare and energy, but you can make money across multiple verticals. So what's the staging? The first is the development stage. We have to build out the middleware. We have to continue building out our chips, specifically in JV with the manufacturers. We have to form those JVs, and then we have to work with them to optimize the chips. On the services side, you already have a lot of these capabilities, so you can wait here. But as you get closer to launch, again, like I said, you're going to have to look internally and decide, do you need to increase any of your capabilities? There's also, this is a global opportunity, but I just want to talk about the fact that there is a big difference, I think, between developing nations and developed nations. What we've laid out here is largely what we envision for developed nations. And we think in terms of staging and timing, it makes sense to go there first because a lot of the infrastructure is already in place. But it doesn't mean you don't go after the developing nations. It's just the timing and the solution offering is a little different. What I mean by that is it might be like a solution light for the developing nations, and as their infrastructure builds out and becomes stronger, you begin to ramp that up. And also, I think it makes sense that you are stretching the timeline there because this is a potentially big investment, and one way to mitigate that risk is stretching it over time. I now want to talk about some risks and uncertainties. There are a number of risks and uncertainties in any venture or new area you go into, but I think the biggest one here that we see is around demand. Now, smart grid, for example, everyone has a lot of expectations about how well built out the infrastructure is going to be in 2015 or 2020. But the reality is we don't fully know that. So I think it's important that we take steps to kind of mitigate that risk. I think the JVs are very important there. You can share costs and kind of spread that cost and reduce that risk there. Also through the staging and how much you invest where and when is important. And also I think this marketing play that we're doing is important because by having the marketing play with the manufacturers, you can help stimulate demand. On healthcare, there's a big concern over the data and the security of that data. I think one thing we can really do there is work with the regulators and partner with the industry leaders to help set the standards of the industry. The sooner the standards of the industry are agreed upon, the faster you'll remove that roadblock. And technology, again, going back to smart grid, there's a lot of different players who have differing types of communication technologies that will enable the smart grid to communicate. We're one of those players. I think it's very, very important that we partner with the leaders in that industry, such as Google, to establish those standards. We want to make sure that Ericsson is either the preeminent standard or at least one of the top standards within the industry. So to kind of wrap this all up and bring it together, we have this entire platform that we've talked about, largely composed of the network, the chips, and this middleware solution that all come together. Now, these numbers here are for healthcare and energy, and when you wrap it all together, again, to reiterate, it's around $800 to $2.1 billion. And on a share basis, that's around 25 cents to 70 cents per share. Based off the around $11 share price that Ericsson is at right now, that's a 5 to 6% boost. But again, this is one piece of the pie. There's all these other verticals. You know, I think there's further analysis that needs to go around of like how you stage that and where you're going to play. But I think there's a lot more opportunity to just the 800 than the 2.1 that we're talking about for Ericsson as a whole. With that, that concludes our presentation. We'd like to thank you all and open it for questions.
Go ahead. Thanks for a good presentation, team. I would like to ask a question that maybe can help me understand this a little better. Could you tie your slide 5, which is the advantages, the ways Ericsson can take advantages of the challenges that you laid out directly to your recommendations overview? I'm having a little trouble connecting this to the final recommendations.
So, I'm sorry, can you just reiterate the question one more time?
Tie this back to your final recommendations.
Chris, I can talk about that for a
Okay.
minute. And so by final recommendations, you mean the middleware and the chips and whatnot?
your final slide that says recommendations with the 3 big line items in it.
Sure. So for the first one, right, let's look at increased quality of care through evidence-based medicine. By enabling devices such as X-ray machines and other data collection devices with wireless chips, that data will actually be able to be brought up into a cloud, and doctors will be able to make decisions based upon real-time data that's up to date, as opposed to out-of-date charts that they may not even have access to. They'll have access to your complete case history, so they'll be able to make better decisions based upon treatments that you've had in the past. Optimizing tests, you're going to...
Wes,
Oh, go ahead.
From the perspective of Ericsson's opportunity for revenue, I mean, I get the bigger picture with regard to what you're trying to do, but
Right.
this I'm understanding as connectivity opportunities for Ericsson.
Right. So I think one of the things there that maybe would clarify this is these are probably more drivers that would drive adoption of your technologies. Okay. So I don't know that I would say that Ericsson's going to come out with an evidence-based medicine solution per se, but rather evidence-based medicine is a trend that would drive sales for you.
Okay.
If that makes sense.
That makes a lot more sense. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. I have a question here. Your assumption on the optimized chips, I have a couple of questions there, actually. First of all, how have you calculated the number of 250 to 630 million revenue?
On the optimized chips? Right. So the way we did that is what we did is first we looked at what are the number of devices that are expected to be on the market in 2015, and we came to a number of around 3.5 billion is what the research was showing us. So we had that number. We then wanted to know, well, what percentage of that is going to be healthcare and IT? So we took some industry reports, mainly Gartner, that had a split of IT spend across different industry verticals, and we looked at that mix, and we applied that to get a rough, I know it's ballpark, but a rough ballpark estimate of number of devices that would be healthcare or energy focused. Next, we looked at actually, we broke down the iPhone and looked at how much those chips cost in there, and we took that. It was $2.81, I believe, and we applied that to a 10% share. I think from our understanding, ST Ericsson has around a 10% share right now, and we did a range of 10 to 25% because 10% kind of being conservative on that's what they currently do, but I think this increased opportunity could actually potentially increase that. And so taking that, applying it back to the original number of devices for healthcare and energy, we got total number of devices, multiplied that by the $2.81, and that gave us our revenue range.
So what type of communication device cost $2?
It was the technical
It was
term.
a 3G chip. 3G
Okay, because
chip.
on the internet it says $15 on an iPhone.
This is information we got through iSupply, so we can certainly follow up.
Because maybe Wi-Fi can cost $2.
It was a CDMA 3G chip, but we can talk about that offline certainly.
Yeah.
Okay. So another question then connected to why do we need to form a JV with the customers that buys the chips?
Which JV are you referencing?
I think you mentioned.
Yes. Going back to the slide number 13. You first state direct sales, and then you said form JV on the optimized chips.
You mean the two pieces of revenue, is that what you're referring to?
Yeah.
So I think the idea was we would direct sell the chip to the manufacturer, but then our thoughts were, because of the fact that we're actually forming this relationship and there might be this joint marketing play, that joint marketing play might warrant some sort of revenue share. Now, in our calculations that we laid out for you, in terms of potential revenue, we only counted the direct sale because, to be honest, wrapping our mind completely around what that revenue share might look like at this point, we're not completely solid in what that might be, so we took the more conservative stance of just leaving it out of the calculation for now.
I think also one thing to note too is that there is an anticipation that some of these devices within hospitals may be specialized, and so in so much as we wanted some expertise in that area, that's where the JV could help with that too.
What is the optimized part of the chip that is different from the chips today? Why do you need to develop a complete new chip?
Well, I think I think one of the use cases back here probably illustrates it a little bit better. When we look at some of these connected devices, for instance, on the left right here, for instance, your stove, your microwave oven, your car, the full power of that chip may not be necessary, and you may also need some additional intelligence, shall we say, within that particular device. And so this chip would be optimized in a manner that's low power and is low cost, but yet still provides the minimal amount of communication to interface with that device so that you can get meaningful data from it.
Thank you.
Does that clarify?
Ask a question. On this slide, who's buying the MCE?
Our anticipation is that the MCE would primarily be purchased by the mobile operators, so Verizon, AT&T, people of that nature.
So your numbers that you have calculated, is this for a US market or is this a global market? What is the scope of this business?
It was based off a global market. It was because the device numbers that we were calculating was total number of devices worldwide.
Okay, and I have a follow-on question. I think Arun read my mind too. On the professional services aspect, who's buying the professional services? And my question kind of wraps around the idea of the value flow in your proposal, in your whole presentation, how that goes.
Right, certainly. So I think the professional services would be purchased by a number of users, and it kind of varies on use case. But to give you a couple of use cases, one would be, for instance, if you were creating a smart device. For instance, if GE wanted to produce a smart refrigerator or something like that, there would be professional consultative type services to help them do that and help them understand how to best harness that data and pull that data up into the cloud. As another example, though, you might have a hospital client who's looking to basically automate and introduce a lot of technology to reduce costs. So there'd be professional services there to help them understand what types of telco solutions and specifically Ericsson solutions would be available for them to do that. And so these folks could help them craft a comprehensive solution.
So what's the Ericsson differentiator here to become dominant? Because the space you defined is very, very competitive.
Certainly. I think the expertise with, first of all, the Ericsson product set, and so you see a lot of this with Oracle and IBM. You know, they're very competent with their own product set, so that's one. I think also, as Chris mentioned, there would be some industry expertise that would either need to be built or purchased because clients are going to significantly look for that. Not only industry, when I say industry there, I mean industry as in healthcare, energy, and other verticals that you're interested in. So it would actually be, the differentiator would be that knowledge of understanding how to apply ICT technologies to a specific vertical in a way that has a positive and meaningful ROI and really actually helps the client.
Okay, thank you.
I'd like to thank you guys very much for your time.
Thank you very much.